So the name 10 to 1 is inspired by the original Caribbean Federation, right, which consisted of 10 countries. This idea of 10 becoming one. And so the brand has always been based on this idea of community strength in numbers, the idea that we are all stronger together than we are apart. And I offer that little anecdote because it actually is a great key to unlock how we thought about the liquid.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Eliza Barbanel. Marc-Kwesi Farrell is the founder of 10 to 1, a contemporary Caribbean rum brand. Born in Trinidad, he's passionate about broadening and celebrating global perceptions of rum through premium blends and storytelling, including drawing from his experience as the youngest vice president at Starbucks. Today on the show, Marc goes deep on rum distillation and culture, bringing on the legendary singer Ciara as a co-owner in the brand and his plans for the future.
And at the top of the show, it's the return of Three Things, where Eliza and I talk about what is exciting us in the world of restaurants, cookbooks, and the food world as a whole. Eliza, we're back with Three Things. How are you?
I'm good, Matt. How are you?
I feel rested.
Yeah.
I was on a 12-hour drive from Michigan yesterday.
And somehow that was
so
restful.
Rested. This is the opposite of the truth. You want to start?
Well, I'll just say I've been snacking on these blueberries that you brought back from Michigan, which is not one of my formal Three Things, but I do think a good blueberry is underrated as a fruit.
I'm so happy you brought that up. I got those at Houston's farm stand, which is right by my house in Kalamazoo, and they're really big right now on the west side of Michigan.
Big as in like they're large blueberries.
That's true. Like the shape of them are big. They just started the season probably last week. They're just getting picked. And I always have thought, the East Coast does such a great job with apples. And I mean, stone fruits can be very good here. I've never really thought the blueberries on the East Coast, and this includes Maine, I'm just saying that, have surpassed. Shots fired. Have surpassed the West Michigan blueberry. Just saying.
I think a good blueberry that's perfectly firm and juicy and not mushy at all is so special. And honestly, I think you just have to get them and eat them right away before they start to turn. So I'm enjoying this snack.
I'm glad you are. And they do degrade over time, right? You have to go to the bush and pick them and eat them and eat like way too many.
Yeah, very brown bear core.
Yeah, it's good. It's good for digestion. You start. What's your first thing?
Okay, my first thing is I went upstate over the weekend to hang out with my friend Amalia, who has this beautiful property called Callisto Farm in High Falls. And I swam in a bunch of different bodies of water. I hiked, and I had a nice lunch at Harana Market, which I have not been to, but has been on my list upstate for a while. Have you been there?
I have. I love Harana Market. I had a wonderful dinner there maybe a couple summers ago. And do they still have the turntable in the dining room?
I didn't see that, but I was kind of very hungry and focused on my meal. Harana Market is in Accord. They were a 2024 James Beard semifinalist. By the name, I thought it was going to be like a deli counter with a lot of prepared food, but it actually is a restaurant with a small, like, dry goods section. Yeah. So I think the name maybe belies what it actually is. I really enjoyed this mushroom pancit that we had, which I think is probably a staple on the menu. We also made it, I think you can say make it super, and then you can add sausage and like chicken to that as well. And we got a really good Filipino eggplant salad. That's this kind of squishy, soft, smoky roasted eggplant with tomato and green mango piled on top. Very like tangy, sour, refreshing. Then they also were doing an ube mochi cake. I think it's a new item that they were testing out. And I was a little, sneaky and ordered a slice to go so that we could eat it in the car on the drive back down to the city. And when I opened it, I have never seen a larger piece of mochi cake in my life.
Yeah.
Hefty slab. Oh. Not too sweet, not very sweet at all, honestly. And when we got stuck in traffic, it was kind of the perfect snack to have.
I love that you call those guys out. And the turntable, to clarify, it was like they had clearly had parties there, like dance parties, and they'd rolled out some of the dry goods. And it's a community space as well, which I really like about it. And I remember talking with one of the chefs or people working there, and it was clearly there was like a party happening, which I love that vibe. And I remember having some incredible chicken there. Was that
fried chicken?
Yeah, the fried chicken was really, really excellent. A reminder, I'm going to go up there this summer. Great reminder.
Yeah, I think it's funny, the whole like upstate ecosystem of parties, what you're saying about that. I think like there wasn't one when I was there, but it did really feel like a community space. And even just being upstate for the weekend and hearing people talk about the roller rink that Bjornkorn opened that's across the street from there. Like, that's my next, hopefully one of my future 3 things is going to be going to the Bjornkorn roller rink because I'm very interested in that.
It's been on my list for a long time to go to that roller rink. Tomorrow really wants to go. And also, High Falls has Ollie's there.
Yes, Ollie's I do really love.
Yeah. I love their pizzas.
What's your first thing?
My first thing is 2 new water discoveries that I'm excited about. We're keeping the trend here. I just am in love with mineral water, with seltzers, with just an interesting take on water. And the 2 I've been introduced to, one's a small brand, one's a big brand. The first is Freebird Southern Spring Water. I discovered this while walking the Fancy Food Show. It's domestic water. It's bottled in Georgia's Blue Ridge Mountains, and they serve them in these large tall boys in both sparkling and still, and just delicious water. I thought that the carbonation was to the level that I like, which is not too much, but enough to know it's there. And I just really met with the founders at the show and really like this product. The other is, and you may have seen it on social, they've been doing a lot of ads and stuff, but they sent me the new Spindrift flavor. Yuzu mandarin. You get hooked with that? You get the plug?
No, I haven't tried it yet. I just have been getting the messaging.
Yeah, they're really on the messaging, and I have to admit, like, they sent me the drink, and I'm talking about it. So good job, you guys. But I really do like this flavor. I do like Spindrift. I'm typically in the lemon end of the spectrum, but the combination of yuzu and mandarin, which I don't know if that like necessarily jumps out as a great pairing for me. I typically like those flavors separately. It's definitely more mandarin than yuzu, and yuzu is obviously super buzzy as a flavor, so they're clearly playing around with that. But I really liked it. I thought it was a nice flavor. It's nice to have new Spindrift in my life.
I love the water updates from you, Matt.
Whenever I'm traveling, I'm doing the local mineral waters. What's your next thing?
My next thing is just a recipe that I really loved and can't wait to make again, which is I saw Haley Catalano post a video for a cold shrimp roll with celery salad, and I made it immediately for dinner that night, and it was just so delicious and simple. And I don't have central AC in my apartment, so I really don't want to do anything hot or don't want to be using the stove for that long. So all I had to do was, quickly poach my shrimp, and then you kind of make a very simple mustard mayo dressing for that, shaved celery on top, split top brioche bun, which my little deli on the corner happened to sell miraculously. It was so good, and it just felt like the kind of thing that I would easily pay 3 times as much for. In Connecticut or
it's
Long
like 27
somewhere.
In someplace, it's one of those sandwiches.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It was super simple, and it just felt really seasonal. And then I was bragging and sending photos of it to my friends because it was just so fun. So I love this recipe.
I also love that you watched the video or read the recipe and you made it right away. I love that impulse. I find myself doing that from time to time. And I know we talk about it a lot with creators and just about the culture of food discovery. That's so cool that you did it. You just made it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Haley, really everything she does, it just seems to be, maybe because we live in a similar, she's in Jersey, but I feel like it's very much attuned to what I also happen to be craving that day. And she has this website, so not only could I watch the video, but I could go to the website, glance over the recipe, get a sense of how it comes together, and then just kind of make it happen.
Love that. And Haley recently appeared on the show and will be in July 23rd at the Bell House with us in our great event that we're having there.
Yes, I can show her photos of my shrimp rolls.
Oh, yeah. She would love that.
What's your next thing?
My next thing is we're deep in the planning for fall preview, so I think in 3 things I'm going to start sprinkling in some fall cookbooks. And one that really jumped out is a book that's coming out in October. It's called 3 Cheers. It's by Caitlin Stewart, and I love the idea here. It's 165 recipes, which is a lot of recipes for a cocktail book. And the concept with 3 Cheers is that there are 3 variations of a base recipe. There is a classic, there is a spin or modern twist, and there is an NA. And I think it's a really modern book. I paged through it recently and just really loved the photography and enjoyed it. One of the recipes is the espresso martini, where the base is just vodka and a coffee liqueur. The spin is with tequila and chili liqueur, and then there's an NA, which is like a version of the espresso tonic. So you could make it for a party and do 3 versions of it. I think that's really smart. Their Cosmo take is, of course, the cranberry and vodka base. The modern has Earl Grey infused limoncello and with cranberry vodka, and the zero proof uses some really cool non-alcoholic spirits and aperitifs in it as well. So there's some complicated recipes and some non-complicated. But it speaks to me to combine NA with spirits and do it in a creative way.
Yeah, definitely.
Very cool. What's your last thing?
My last thing is that I went to Lei Wine recently, which is Annie Shi's new spot in Chinatown. Annie is the co-owner and the beverage director of King and Jupiter, and I was really excited to go there. And I just think it's like the perfect wine bar.
Yeah.
I really loved everything I ate there. So the concept is that it's a wine bar and Annie is, running the list and bringing in a lot of low intervention wine from Europe mostly. And that also has really great Chinese food, which I believe Patty Lee, who was previously at Mission Chinese Food, is running the kitchen there. I had really good, like a plate of Jinhua ham with Asian pear, this like chilled Celtis that had jelly kind of layered in between it. So you got that kind of cold, crunchy, squishy bite. They have a 8-treasure rice pudding with sticky toffee for dessert, and the whole space is beautiful. It's very small, and it has like kind of burgundy tile vibe inside. I really can't wait to come back, and I'm also going to have Annie on the show to talk more about the space, which I think will be really fun.
I saw Annie on the schedule for booking, and I was so happy because I was going to reach out as well because I've been following Annie's work from King and just in general as a really cool person and has a great story to tell. So I love that we will have Annie on the show.
Yeah, and it's on Doyer Street, like in the very heart of old Chinatown, which I think is really interesting to see that neighborhood changing and new spots coming in. And when I was there, it really felt like it was a really nice like evolution of the neighborhood without kind of going away from its roots. There was even this kind of older gentleman sitting inside who was like drinking wine in the kitchen, like popping around. Yeah. And I was like, Annie, like, who is this guy? Because he felt like it was his spot also. And it turned out that, I need to find out the name of this restaurant, but he's a old school restaurateur in Chinatown. He had a restaurant in Chinatown that was the first Chinese restaurant to be recognized for its wine program by, I believe, like Wine Enthusiast magazine. And he's really kind of like OG in the game, holding court at the table with his friends. So I can't wait to go back and, see who else is there and try more things.
I really want to stop by. I heard the food is amazing. From early word is the food is great. So
it's great. What's your last thing?
My last thing is simply that it is Tour de France season, and I just need to just talk about it with somebody,
okay,
including all of us. Been a big tradition of mine every July, probably for a decade. I'm just like firing up Peacock, like every moment I have in front of a screen between 8 a.m. and noon Eastern time. And I just love the Tour de France for a lot of reasons. I of course, love France. And what people sometimes don't realize is that the production of the Tour de France is government funded. It is not just about the race, but it is about presenting France in its best way. And the amount of money they spend on helicopters alone and the incredible cinematography of a Tour de France broadcast it's like we have our sports on ESPN, which is very much American and in your face. The French, the way they film sports is very different. And what I like about it is I like the races. I'll get to some of my guys who I enjoy watching compete, but I also just love learning about towns and history through the race. And if I'm there for 3-4 hours watching the race, I get to learn about a region of France that maybe I haven't heard about. And then, the race itself, they've had these two racers, the Slovenian Tadej Pogačar and the Dane Jonas Vingegaard. Those are like the two, it's like the LeBron and everyone else. I guess it'd be like LeBron Jordan at this point if they were competing together. That's a really bad sports comparison, but I'm doing my best here. Either of them have won the last 5 years. And cycling is just a very cool sport. I know everyone loves Formula One. I think Formula One is really boring. And I think the endurance racing it's a 3-week race, and these athletes are incredible. And I just love hearing about their stories and watching them, climb on stage 16. They're going to be going back to Mount Ventoux, which is one of the classic climbs of the Tour de France. They go there every few years. This is a Mount Ventoux year. I'm personally loving Wout van Aert, who's a Belgian sprinter. I love the way he rides, and it's definitely my tradition every summer is to check out the Tour de France.
Well, I have to ask what your go-to Tour de France watch snack is.
Ooh, I love the question. So in the morning, I'll definitely do, if I have a baguette, I'm gonna go baguette with cheese. I'm just gonna pair it like with the classic pairing. Mm-hmm. But for me, I think I'll whip up a ratatouille. if I'm doing like an afternoon, viewing on tape, if I haven't had a chance, if I'm working in the morning and I want to catch it in the afternoon, I'll do that. Yeah.
Sounds lovely.
Yeah, that's a great follow-up question. You're quite the journalist there. Have you ever watched the Tour de France?
Yes, I have not set out on my own to watch it, but I definitely have been around other people who are watching it. And you know me, I'm a fair weather fan for just about anything. So I'm always happy to kind of buy in and watch it. And I do like going around the city this time of year and seeing, bars that are having watch parties, people following along. It's not quite World Cup FIFA level in terms of public engagement, but certainly a lot of folks are watching it. So I'm glad that you have this moment, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the viewing.
Jambon bear, by the way, that's probably going to take over a cheese and bread if I have any good ham with definitely with Dijon and Cornichon. That's
perfect.
That's kind of how I do it. But thank you for sharing your 3 things.
You too.
On July 23rd, we are hosting quite an event at the Bell House in Brooklyn, and you can get your tickets now. Eliza and I will be joined on stage by some of the food world's most interesting figures, including Haley Catalano and Chuck Cruz, and the one and only Padma Lakshmi. We will talk about summer cooking and some of the big topics of the day. The event will also feature a live taping of Bon Appetit's Bake Club with Jesse Shepchek and Shilpa Uskokovic. That's Haley, Chuck, Shilpa, Jesse, and Padma, all appearing on the Bell House stage with Eliza and I. July 23rd is the date. Get your tickets at the Bell House website or the link in our show notes. I hope to see you there.
Marc-Kwesi Farrell, this is Taste. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. Great to be here.
I'm really excited to talk with you all about 10-to-1 rum. This is definitely the earliest part of the day for me to be talking about alcohol, but I think I'll probably want to drink after this.
Exactly. We'll get you set up for happy hour this evening.
Exactly. Happy hour is whenever you want it to be.
Absolutely.
I really want to talk about, the business and how it's grown. But before we get into that, I want to just get a little bit of insight into who you are and your own background in food and beverage. And I'm wondering if you can tell me an early food memory from growing up.
Man, an early food memory. Coming from a place like Trinidad, that's almost like asking if you remember your first breath.
Yeah, do you remember your life?
No, but it's so well woven into all of our earliest memories and moments in life. It's hard to think about a moment with family or with friends that didn't involve food.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me, it probably is taking you back to sort of our early Christmas celebrations. My mom's side of the family, we're all super close. Christmas time, my late grandmother, my aunts, uncles, cousins, etc., all gathering around, epic spread every single year, some combination of different foods from all over. Trinidad's a mix of all these different sort of cultural influences, right? Ethnic and cultural influences. And so seeing all of those at the table and just being able to eat until you quite literally cannot move anymore. I mean, that's probably the first kind of, the earliest memories that come to mind around food.
I love that. Was there one thing that you would always be putting on your plate first?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of Trinis, macaroni pie, which sort of our baked version of mac and cheese, is a favorite. Always has to be on there. I love curry, so curry goat would be a favorite of mine for sure. Eat it at Christmas as well, and a whole host of other things too.
And I bet Christmas and probably beyond that, rum would always be on the table, a part of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I tell people sort of rum is it's a part of all these different moments of celebration, right? Big and small, highbrow and lowbrow. And so, yeah, I mean, in those earliest moments and memories, I wasn't the one drinking the rum.
No.
But certainly, you see your dad and your uncles and, friends with the family and stuff, all partaking and all celebrating. And yeah, rum was very much a part of all those same occasions.
And when you were of age to be drinking the rum, is there you start with a cocktail? Do you just drink it straight? Do you have any memory of how that kind of habit was introduced to you?
Yeah, I think cocktails in Trinidad, not so much. I think it's more, almost like the rum with a baseline mixer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whether people were doing sort of rum and coke in the early days, as teens into early 20s, rum and soda water, coconut water, tonic water, sort of those core mixers. And then, of course, folks will just graduate to a world where they're drinking it neat on the rocks.
Yeah, I think definitely the first time that I had rum as a teenager in the U.S. was that kind of rum and coke combination. And it was probably one of those flavored rums that had like coconut or something else in it. And it really wasn't, it was delicious because it didn't taste like alcohol, but it definitely wasn't the kind of rum that I would crave. And I think it's kind of been interesting to watch 10 to 1 and some other rum brands like be introducing these more, not adulterated or flavored, but just like deliciously naturally flavored rums into the industry. Is that kind of one of the goals for the company?
Yeah, 100%. I think if you sort of follow the consumer's arc, the consumer's journey in other categories, right? I mean, we all had those stories, whether it was in rum, tequila, vodka, etc., right? Like the super sweet cocktails that you had when you were on spring break or, sort of making that early foray into the world of spirits. And then over time, you've seen it happen with tequila, right? Folks now look at tequila as a sipping spirit, very elevated. Of course, you can bring it to life in cocktails as well. And rum, I think, has had this struggle over the years where it hasn't really jumped the shark in quite the same way, right? I mean, people still almost kind of harken themselves back to some spring break trip or some resort that they were on, sugary, slushy, frozen cocktails. And then once they've decided to graduate past that, they don't really sort of pick up the rum journey elsewhere. And so 10 to 1 is very much this exercise in trying to get people to reimagine the space, to reinvigorate a little bit of their passion and their energy around it. It's such an incredibly dynamic and versatile and magical category. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased as a founder of a rum brand, but certainly is true. And so, yeah, I think trying to kind of educate consumers and get them to reconsider the space in a different way is very much what 10 to 1 has been at the forefront of trying to push.
Yeah, and also the fact that rum is a category that has so many different expressions and can vary so much based on the country. When you were thinking about what 10 to 1 would be, how did you kind of narrow in on what your core rum products would be?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that idea that rum has so much range, so much versatility, some people will say rum has no rules. I don't think that's true, but I think that's something that can work in your favor, but has also worked against the category historically, where it's like, so is it aged or unaged? Do I know the provenance? Do I know where it's from? Are there additives? Are there not? Like all of those questions, I think, have led to a lot of confusion and a sense of defeat for some consumers, right? And 10 to 1, I think, in many ways tries to fly in the face of that. You asked sort of how we arrived at our point of view on the spirit. And I'll tell you, actually, before even getting into that, the origin story of the 10 to 1 name, right? So the name 10 to 1 is inspired by the original Caribbean Federation, right, which consisted of 10 countries. This idea of 10 becoming one. And so the brand has always been based on this idea of community strength in numbers, the idea that we are all stronger together than we are apart. And I offer that little anecdote because it actually is a great key to unlock how we thought about the liquid, right? Think about the best of the Caribbean in a single bottle. My point of view was if you could bring to life different distillation methods, different provenance, different terroir from around the Caribbean, right? You could create something very nuanced and very unique and very exceptional in its own right? Some of the magic of a Jamaican pot still rum sitting alongside a Trinidadian column still, that rich, robust sort of Barbados characteristic as well. All of a sudden, when you put those elements together, right, you've created something that is better than any one of them could have been on their own. And so that's a little bit of sort of the genesis of the 10 to 1 story, this idea that there's real beauty and real magic in the blend.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think that in some categories, like with wine, for example, or tequila, like having a blend from multiple different places, like I think customers or consumers would be averse to that. But I think what you're talking about is that like all of these expressions can come together and it makes it kind of like not a new product, but a different type of rum.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, and sure, I think that's true. And as you said, in whiskey and wine and other categories where sometimes people may look at a blend and ask whether that implies sort of lower quality, lesser than. For me, I think the secret is being able to articulate to the consumer why you've gone ahead and done it, right? And so if I can educate you on, again, like a Jamaican rum with some of those, funky, grassy, sort of estery notes sitting alongside, the cedar and the toffee and the caramel, sort of those richer notes of a Barbados rum, for example, I think you can then sort of create this, I think, a more nuanced expression that folks really come to appreciate. And so, again, that's kind of where we try to hang our hat with 10 to 1 from a blend perspective.
It's intentionality in that blend.
That's right. Exactly.
And I think something that I really was enjoying learning about you when I was doing research before this interview is just kind of the whole trajectory of your career and even the fact that is this right? You left Trinidad at 16 to study chemical engineering at MIT.
That is correct.
Do you feel like that like science background informs like maybe not even the distillation, but just kind of the perspective of how you're creating these products?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny to think about sort of the journey that you go on as a teenager, as a young adult, right?
Little Mark.
Exactly. Little Mark, what would he think now? All these different twists and turns. But I think that like that early foundation, something like chemical engineering, gives you an appreciation for, how you're going to bring any sort of product to life, in the consumer space. I always, when I'm walking people through a rum tasting, walking them through sort of the 10-to-1 story, for example, I'll talk a lot about the esters in Jamaican rums, right? The volatiles, right? That's when you're getting some of those notes that are sort of coming off the rum and into your nose, and the banana peel and some of those grassier notes and all those elements. I mean, that is very much some of your chemical engineering background coming home to roost. And so, I think like an appreciation for the different distillation methods, an appreciation for, the esters, some of the other different volatiles and the other components that come together to create an exceptional product has been informed by those early days back at MIT.
Yeah, can we do a rum 101 for a second? Like, is rum only made from sugarcane? What is the spirit made of? And this word ester that you're talking about, like, what is that too?
Yeah, for sure. So, yes, I mean, rum by its very definition is a byproduct of some form of sugar or sugarcane. So in the English and Spanish-speaking Caribbean, they're typically using molasses, right? Every spirit is made from some form of complex carb, right? Whether it's like potatoes, wheat, barley, grain, agave, etc., right? Like in the case of rum, it's a sugarcane byproduct. So molasses in the English and Spanish-speaking Caribbean. In the French-speaking Caribbean, they use sugarcane juice. So imagine cutting a sugarcane stalk, crushing it to get the juice, and that's the thing that you use as kind of your core input, right? As in the case of any other spirit, you're going to add a yeast, right? Yeast is basically going to break down that complex sugar, right, into alcohol, right? And then when you put something in a still, distilling it is separating sort of the alcohol from sort of the fermented mash, effectively, right? If you use something like a column still, which Trinidad and Dominican Republic use, that's what you'd use in vodka as well, right? Where vodka is designed to give you sort of almost like a colorless, odorless, tasteless spirit. It's all about the efficacy of that distillation. If you use something like a pot distillation method, it doesn't separate the distillate as cleanly. And so you'll typically get these funkier notes, some of these vegetal qualities, because you're bringing some of the terroir along with you as you complete that distillation process. And so if you think about sort of in that rum 101, there's many different decisions you're making along the way that get you to the final product. One being molasses versus sugarcane juice, another being column still versus pot still, aged versus unaged, right? People often ask, why is aged rum that color?
Yeah.
And the answer is, well, because it's been sitting in a barrel for a number of years. All spirits are colorless when they come off the still. They typically get their color because they've been sitting in a barrel maturing for some period of time. Now, rum again gets a little bit of a bad rep because there are lots of big brands out there that have added like caramel coloring and vanilla extract to their rums, which give unaged rums the appearance of being aged. But for a additive-free story like 10-to-1, it is the barrel that's sort of giving you that color effectively. And so aged and unaged, and then of course blend versus single estate or single origin. And as I mentioned before, we've gone down this path of bringing together the magic from multiple countries to create something unique and quite expressive there. So that'd be kind of my quick rum 101 rundown. You had asked about esters before. Just think about esters as volatiles. If you have different sort of compounds that exist in any liquid, some of them are more volatile than others, right? And so those volatiles, right? If you imagine sort of smelling a liquid, are going to be the ones that sort of come off the top quicker, right? You know, you're engaging with the nose of a liquid, whether it's a rum or whiskey or what have you. Some of those esters and Jamaican rums, known for being quite funky, have more of those esters and volatiles coming off the top. That's the easiest way to think about it.
Okay, I feel like I'm ready for my rum pop quiz at the end of the episode now.
Yeah, exactly. You'll never lack for knowledge after this. When
you do a tasting with people, are you kind of giving that context? And what else do you kind of try to use to guide people when they're tasting different expressions of rum?
Yeah, 100%. You know, I think for us, at a high level, first of all, let me be super clear. I'm not a classically trained somm by any stretch of the imagination. And so we don't try to be overly precious with this. I think our view is sort of what you smell is what you smell, what you taste is what you taste, right? We'll offer some some breadcrumbs, some anecdotes, and typically people respond well to those. But for me, if I'm walking you through a tasting, I try to almost kind of separate the experience of the nose from the palate, right, at a high level. So before you go in and just start drinking it, right, engage with the nose, see what notes you pick up. If we were doing a live tasting of our 10-to-1 aged rum right now, I'd be sort of pointing out some of the notes of some of the banana peel, some of the baking spice, some of the cooked fruit that you might get off the top, and people tend to recognize those versus the experience in the palate, which has more of a cedar. Some of that barrel that you pick up, some of those barrel notes, feels a little bit bourbon or rye whiskey reminiscent because the rum is aged in ex-bourbon barrels. I would point out something in that kind of caramel toffee space, a little bit of that drying finish, which for us is very important. We didn't want to create a very like a super sweet, cloying, coating kind of a profile. And so, yeah, I think just kind of talking folks through that experience as they sort of start at the top with the nose and walk all the way through sort of that experience on the palate. That's usually how I'll guide you through a tasting.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you say about not being overly dogmatic and kind of giving people jumping off points, but letting them have their own experience with the rum. Because certainly when I've tried 10-to-1 before on its own or in a cocktail, there is so much going on there that I feel like it's pretty easy to, I don't know, free associate, like just kind of think about like not only what is the taste, but what is the kind of emotional connection that it can have.
Yeah, 1,000%. You know, I think for me, a couple of things. One, when folks might ask for some guidance on like what goes well with this rum, right? I'll typically tell them, you know, it's a little bit of the whole what grows together goes together sort of adage, right? And so, you know, as you pick up some of those notes, right, like a coffee versus a chocolate, right? I think with our aged rum, having that as a dessert pairing might be amazing. With our white rum, when you pick up some of those brighter notes, like pairing with citrus might be amazing, whether it's in a cocktail or something fresh like a ceviche. And so, again, I think like it gives you room and it gives you latitude to kind of explore. You give folks some loosely held POVs, right, from having done this a few different times, and then let them go on their own journey and discover and explore off the back of that. And so, yeah, not being too precious with that sort of education piece, I think is something that we found to be quite effective.
Yeah. I want to talk a little more about kind of the growth of the brand and where you kind of see things going or want things to go. I think 2019 is when you launched,
yep,
right?
That's right.
Over the past couple years, do you feel like there's been like a era of growth that you're focusing on, or how would you kind of explain like this moment in 10-to-1's trajectory?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, we've been fortunate over the last 5-6 years, you know, since we brought the brand to market, to have seen, I think, some really amazing and really encouraging resonance.
Yeah.
From both the trade and consumers alike. I think actually those are two different customers effectively that you're always trying to serve and to win over as you go forward. I think for us, in the early days, we spent a lot of time building energy in the on-premise. So for listeners, you know, your bars, your restaurants, your hotel hospitality groups, etc., where our view was 10-to-1 has so much to offer from a liquid perspective that really kind of building that liquid credibility, sharing it with the trade, right? Yeah, I think an amazing bartender can become an incredible mouthpiece for your brand, right? They love the liquid. They know how to bring it to life in unique and interesting cocktails. If you are somebody who is curious, I think that to me is kind of the core attribute of a 10-to-1 consumer. They have a natural curiosity and sense of discovery to them. Then saddling up at that bar, talking to the bartender, seeing what they recommend, getting a little, you know, rapid fire 101 on rum and 10-to-1 is exactly what we're after. And so I think in this portion of our journey, a lot of our time and attention has been focused on cultivating that energy with the trade. And I think we've been able to build some incredible advocates off the back of that, right? By the same token, of course, like you also want to make sure you're creating that right level of energy with the consumer. And for us, that is everything from having a very solid footprint in IRL, right? So think about lots of your events. To me, liquid to lips is incredibly important. In Trinidad, we would say something like the rum can't hide, right? Like the rum doesn't hide. If I can put it in front of you, that's always going to be a win for me. I want to lead with my liquid whenever and wherever I can. And so when you think about eventing, when you think about community building, right? Like can you find your people, right? Who are the folks with whom the 10 to 1 story really resonates, right? Who see the same sense of purpose in the brand as they see in themselves. And really trying to kind of lean in and support those communities in different ways certainly is a core anchor for us. And then, of course, all the other standard pieces you do around growth marketing and your paid and your social and your email, all of those elements being brought to life as well.
Coming on podcasts, yeah.
Coming on podcasts, exactly. Spreading the good word of rum however we can.
Absolutely. So. I think the community point is so interesting. And certainly I think there are many people that resonate with 10 to 1 and like the rum. But I think especially being a Black-owned rum brand, like whenever I'm at certain parties, like pop-ups with certain chefs, like I always expect, not in a bad way, but in a great way, that I'll see 10 to 1 on the menu because I know that it's something that's really resonated in that way.
Yeah, which I appreciate. I think like in my view, this idea of community, the sense of community, has always been super important to me and therefore to us as a brand. Obviously, my own moorings as somebody who's proudly, of the soil in the Caribbean. Obviously, as a Black man, Black male building a business here in the U.S. as well. I mean, those are some of like the phenotypical attributes I think you can attach to me and to the brand. But I think actually it's broader than that. I was coming back to this idea of curiosity. I think a lot about creators, all right, and actually creators of culture. If you are somebody who believes in the value of again, kind of creating culture. You're an innovator. You're a disruptor. You're somebody who values discovery in whatever places and spaces that might be. Art, music, fashion, food. I mean, business. I mean, the list goes on. I think they're going to be facets of the 10 to 1 story that really kind of speak to you. At least I hope will speak to you, and that you kind of identify as sort of part of that broader tribe. We've always talked about 10 to 1. This idea of building a bigger tent. And I used to use that sort of turn of phrase it just kind of came to me in the early days of the brand. But the more I thought about it, the more I actually liked it because, a tent doesn't have any walls.
Yeah.
Right? You create a structure, but folks are welcome to kind of come in and exist under that tent. And I think 10 to 1 as a brand very much has that energy, right? Like it's meant to be very welcoming, very, very much come as you are. Which, by the way, is if you came to the Caribbean, you came to Trinidad, you came to Jamaica, like that's when people sort of reflect on their most memorable trips to the Caribbean, they always talk about that, right? Like they met somebody who they had never encountered in their life before. And by the way, might never see them again. This might be that one time, that one moment where you and this person connect and, you end up in their backyard, drinking some drinks and sharing some stories and, making these moments and these bits of creative magic. Like that to me is so much like the energy and the ethos of the brand and I think tied to the community that we aspire to build.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I was even at the El Dorado Ballroom concert series that Solange was doing in Houston a couple of weeks ago. And I was at the bar and 10 to 1 was like the first bottle I saw in the bar. I was like, this makes like total sense. I need to get a drink right now. And I think it really ties into this kind of like cultural innovation, like even like the music community kind of really embracing 10 to 1. And then another kind of thread I see there obviously is like Ciara's involvement in the brand. And I was curious if you could tell me a little bit about like how that kind of connection came about and what that kind of looks like in practice these days.
Yeah, for sure. C's been a part of the brand for I guess coming up on 4 years now, 3.5 years.
Yeah.
4 years. Came about very serendipitously. I always said, we weren't out there kind of quote unquote looking for a celebrity. Ciara, Russ, myself, we actually share a number of friends in common from my time living in Seattle when I was, doing my gig over at Starbucks. And so one of those friends, a good buddy of mine, Larry Estrada, he sent Ciara a bottle as like a little gift, a little kind of celebratory token a few years ago. She tried the rum. She loved it. She loved the story. Larry kind of made a connection between us. And then, honestly, just like really hit it off from the first second. I always tell people that, again, back to what we were just discussing, 10 to 1 is not like it has all the moorings, all the tenets, all the DNA of Caribbean culture. But it doesn't mean you have to be from the Caribbean to appreciate and to value those things. And so many of the things that I would kind of associate with Caribbeanness, like that spontaneity, that joie de vivre, that love of life, that welcoming nature, that versatility and range, those things just describe Sierra, right? And so I think there's no big surprise then that like a lot of the elements of the 10-to-1 story resonated with her and vice versa. And we've been proud to welcome her into the brand as a co-owner of the brand over the last couple of years. I mean, she's been, I think, really fantastic to work with and work alongside, And you asked, what does that look like in practice? It means a number of different things. I mean, anything from helping us on sort of like the business development side of things with some larger partners that we're always looking to build business with, to certainly introducing the brand to her audience, both online and again, sort of IRL also, certainly pivotal from a community building perspective as well. And so, I think there are multiple different sort of ways and avenues in which kind of having Sierra involved has been fantastic.
Yeah, earlier this year we were chatting about trying to have you on the show, and you were like, "Sorry, I'm taking Sierra to Carnival."
Oh yeah,
I was very jealous.
Exactly. So exactly. Go scroll through the IG and go look at the press clips, and you'll see that Sierra came down and had an amazing time, And I think Trinidad loved her and was really glad to welcome her. Again, Trinidad is the kind of place where I always tell people, like, we don't have like spots for tourists and spots for us. Mm-hmm. Like, if you come down to Trinidad, by definition, you're just doing what we do. You drink where we drink, eat where we eat, party where we party, right? And, again, somebody like Sierra is great from that perspective. She's kind of happy to be in the mix and share her energy with others. And so I think that trip was a big success. So we'll have to get you down there for 2026.
Yeah, I would love that. I have a friend who's Trini who's been trying to get me to come down, and I haven't. So it'll have to be a whole group adventure, maybe.
Yeah, I would love that.
You mentioned your time at Starbucks a little bit earlier. I believe you were like the youngest ever vice president at Starbucks.
That's what the folklore says. I don't know about youngest ever. Youngest when I was there.
That's what the clips online say.
Yeah, exactly. That's what the folklore now says. But whatever it was, I was fairly young as an exec there. I think I was 32 years old when I joined the exec team. And, honestly, just so proud and privileged to have had that opportunity. When you think about, on the face of it, you're like, what does, Fortune 500 corporate coffee, Seattle-based have to do with startup rum, Caribbean DNA, New York-based brand? Like, I don't really feel like they have that much in common. But actually, Starbucks was an incredible finishing school for me in a number of ways. I learned a different sense of brand discipline, a different sense of brand purpose. Howard Schultz is an icon, nothing short of an icon, and an incredible guy to learn from and to sit alongside and all of those things. And I was able to take a number of those lessons and think about how I would want to apply them if and when I had a moment to go create my own thing, right?
Yeah.
And so, brought quite a bit of that. Actually, even you think about sort of like the magic of creating a blend, right? And, coffee has a lot of that same taxonomy as well, whether it's like single origins versus blends and how you articulate that. So, there are a few different pieces that I took from my Starbucks time as I began to think about, the early innings of 10-to-1.
Yeah, I think certainly that was my thought, was these seem like very different, but also parallel, right? It's consumption, it's beverage, it's scale also. I don't know if you necessarily want 10-to-1 to be at the kind of Starbucks global level, but I would imagine that being able to just see how something is run on that scale would be really kind of influential and helpful in different ways.
Yeah, for sure. You just learn it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard to do. And so I think, just like a different level of appreciation for what it takes to get anything to even 1/1000th the scale of Starbucks is still a very, very big business.
Yeah.
I think also, as I mentioned before, how do you get things like brand purpose to scale? How do you get things like culture to scale? There is a parallel there in that, I don't have 30,000, 40,000 nodes, 40,000 coffee shops like Starbucks. But if you think about every bartender that you interact and you meet, right? Every one of your accounts, right, basically is like a node for your brand. And so to what extent can you get them to kind of share some of those cultural elements, some of that storytelling, some of the key talking points around the liquid, some of that folklore around the brand, right? I think actually taking up that challenge, the Starbucks experience does give you some perspective on how to really go attack that. And again, to understand how difficult that is to achieve at scale.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious, talking to you at this point in your career, at this point in the lifespan of 10-to-1 Rum, is there a part of the job of being a founder or running this brand that you think would have surprised yourself when you were first starting out?
Yeah, it's like 100 of them.
Yeah.
How much time do we have? I think, it's all these old adages and cliches, which are true for a reason because, like if you knew all the things that you knew then, that you know now, would you have done it, right? And the answer might be maybe not, right? Because it's just like behind the curtain, so many other minefields that you have to navigate in order to get yourself to a successful place there. I think probably one of the biggest surprises was, and you know it implicitly, but to experience it explicitly is entirely different. Just how sort of hands-on and how tactile of an endeavor this is, whether going from account to account, in city to city, press to press, ton of different events, and I think like just understanding to the degree to which this is very much a roll up your sleeves endeavor, I think was something I had to very quickly cultivate a different level of appreciation for, that you maybe wouldn't see when you're on the outside. Like I'll tell folks that something as simple as this: when you've had a really long week of work, a long day of work, and you're like, man, like all I want to do is just like go to my favorite neighborhood restaurant and like sit down and just like have a 10-to-1 cocktail, have a glass of wine or whatever, and just unwind, right? That's like that's your little oasis. For me, it's much harder to do that, right? Because for me, that account is an extension of my office, right? Like that's a touch point for the brand. That's an opportunity to engage with the bartenders and the teams that are there. And by the way, don't get me wrong, I love doing that stuff, right? Like I'm an extrovert by nature. I love my brand. I love sharing the story. I love meeting new people. But that's not time to decompress. That's not my switch off time. That's almost like my office time. And so I think it's like understanding how commingled sort of your life and your work would ultimately become, I think has been a little bit of a surprise versus what I would have thought going into it.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting also just because of the nature of beverage and alcohol specifically, is that you're right, that is a way that people typically decompress or have their kind of party time. Maybe you need to get into the like nighttime coffee shop frozen yogurt game.
Yeah.
Log off instead.
100%. I'm gonna have to work that into the routine, into the repertoire.
Yeah, that's how you're gonna end up with like a coffee rum cocktail or something like that, though. Yeah.
Which are delicious, by the way.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about rum cocktails. I feel like you must have had so many over the years, even before starting the brand, certainly since. Are there any that you are especially into right now?
Yeah, I mean, a ton of different ones. Hard to beat a rum old fashioned, 10-to-1 rum old fashioned, with our aged expression, which is just like, so simple, so delicious, so elegant. I'm a big white Negroni fan. So I don't do the classics as much, but like a white Negroni with 10-to-1 white, that's probably my go-to order right now. I think bartenders love and appreciate that. And yeah, it really does pair quite well with something like a Suze or another gentian, that certainly I love. We do a lot with the classic daiquiri, a very misunderstood cocktail, but actually the simplest, most elegant cocktail you can create, right? Like it's 3 ingredients: rum, lime, and a little bit of simple syrup or agave, right? None of the other stuff doesn't have to be frozen. And so, I think that's always a great gauge, if you will, of sort of the quality of cocktail that you like to get at a spot. Ask for a classic daiquiri and see what they produce, and that'll give you a great sense of, the level of intention and care and all of those things at a program like that. So those are some of my favorites. Oh, and actually, all the kids these days, espresso martinis. We call it Caribbean coffee. Right. So 10-to-1, you can do the white or the dark, but with our aged rum, I really love it. You get that pairing with the coffee and the cacao and stuff. That's amazing. So those are some of my favorites.
To close today, I want to play a rapid fire game with you. So I'm going to have you play some favorites. I'll ask you a question. You can just tell me the first thing that comes to mind.
Try my best. Let's go.
Okay. Your go-to coffee order?
Nitro cold brew, maybe caramel macchiato, but nitro cold brew.
Do you do any milk in it or no?
Sometimes, but at the moment, no.
Okay. Your favorite rum cocktail?
Rum old fashioned.
The first place that you go eat when you're back in Trinidad?
At the crib. Gotta go see my mom.
Yep.
Yeah.
Your favorite bar in New York?
Oh, I'm not gonna answer that. That's like choosing favorite children.
Okay,
but there's so many incredible ones. I'll say that Côte was our very first account anywhere in the country, and they're still very much near and dear to our hearts. But, Côte, Bar Clemente, Portrait Bar, Attaboy. I mean, there's just so many incredible spots in New York.
It's a very diplomatic answer.
Try to be a diplomat.
Your favorite spot for Caribbean food here in New York?
I love to pull up at Miss Lily's. Yeah, close to my house. Great vibe. Loyal 10-to-1 supporters. Love everything they're doing.
They're classic, really.
Yeah, 100%.
Your go-to ice cream flavor?
Dulce de leche. Decadent.
Your favorite bodega snack?
Honestly, I just probably go for like some salty, buttery popcorn wherever I can kind of pick it up in the aisle. That's probably my go-to.
Yeah. And finally, a fictional food scene, like from a book or a movie or something made up that you wish you could magically eat in real life.
That's a tough one. I don't know. I'll probably just make up my own scene in a movie or something where, people kind of land in some magical, elevated sort of view of the Caribbean, and all they're experiencing is like crazy 10-to-1 cocktails being poured for them. So whatever I create, it will have to be that.
You're making your own movie.
I'm making my own movie, yeah. Which, by the way, is what you do in entrepreneurship. That's literally the story, right? You're trying to, write your own story, write your own script, make your own movie. So I think I'm just imagining sort of what I would love the future to look like.
I'll take it. I think that's the perfect answer for the end of this conversation. And thanks so much for coming in the studio. This was so fun.
Oh, my pleasure. Great to see you.
This is Taste is hosted and produced by Matt Rodbard and me, Eliza Abarbanel. The show is edited by lead producer Clayton Gumbert and supervised by Pat Stango, Director of Media Production and Development at Penguin Random House. Thanks to Shalia Harris and the production team at Penguin Random House. Theme music by Steve Rydell, logo and guest illustrations by Ellie Skurzat. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter to keep updated on all cool things in the world of taste.